the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Into Vanderbilt, what particular about this whole week of offensive basketball did you take away?
Just looked it up, by the way, 73% SEC play. So even in SEC play, it's not as bad as it feels. That's a good question. I think on the macro, it's just the fact that Tennessee came off of probably its worst performance of the year, or at least its most lopsided loss, and was really dialed in and put away two teams. And you heard Rick Barnes talk about probably the thing he was most upset about with the A&M game is he felt like he didn't use the word panicked, but they got off script. Like A&M hit all those shots, and he's like, we reverted from the game plan, and we got away from what we wanted to do. And then you go to an Arkansas team who's the only team in A&M's the only team in the SEC that's worse shooting the three than Arkansas, and they start red hot. And you saw Tennessee stick to the plan, and as you'd expect, Arkansas couldn't keep that up over a 40-minute game. I think when you look at the offense, to me, I think the thing I would pinpoint is that you got multiple guys involved in both games, and I would probably just say Jonas Adu. He didn't have a massive night against Vanderbilt, which again Tennessee didn't need him to. And he, we only played around 20 minutes because that was one of the other really good things about really the week as a whole for Tennessee is they got a lot of rest for their main guys, especially Zakai and Dalton, who are probably going to be logging 35 minutes every game the rest of the season. So yeah, that's nice. But for Jonas, you look at Tennessee's last two SEC losses in South Carolina and A&M, it was losses where the offense was bad. And the reasons you feel like this offense is, there's a number of reasons, but one of the big reasons you feel like this offense is so much better than the last couple of years is that it can find ways to be successful offensively when they don't hit threes. Whereas the last 2 years, even 2 years ago, that offense was pretty solid when Kennedy Chandler got going. If they didn't hit threes, Tennessee wasn't going to score unless it was an Olivier game, which you got one of those a month maybe. This year, it feels like it's different, and Dalton's the biggest reason of that, no doubt. But Jonas is number two, and Jonas has given Tennessee that interior scoring threat that Rick Barnes, those of us who sit in Rick Barnes' press conferences twice a week during basketball season know he brings up over and over again of having a guy you can rely on that can score inside. And he'd kind of gotten away from that. Like, I think, trying to think they've played 12 SEC games now, so they played 10 coming into the week. The first 5 SEC games, Jonas was averaging, I think, 16 points per game, and then the last 5 entering this week, it was 8 points per game. And he scored 6 in both those losses to South Carolina and A&M. So he's the guy that can take the pressure off of Dalton on nights when Zakai and Santi and Josiah aren't shooting well. And it's not like he's been playing horribly, but he had gotten away from, he hadn't been that dominant post force, and it felt like he was the best guy on the court at Arkansas on Wednesday. And while he didn't do a ton offensively last night, it was still, he was more efficient scoring and was just a lot more effective as a whole. And to me, I think he might be the biggest X factor on this Tennessee team as you head into March.
And when we talk about what lies ahead, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of roadblocks here to Tennessee getting to a 1 seed. Potentially, they can make up a bunch of ground, because right now they're looking at that 2 seed spot, which would be good. But you look at the history of the tournament, 1 seeds, the difference between being a 1 seed and a 2 seed and how much likelier you are to make a Final Four or go deeper in the tournament, it's just huge. Like, it doesn't sound like it should be that big of a difference, but 2 seeds go down all the time early in the tournament. 1 seeds rarely do. Like, if you go through it, 1 seeds, it's just where you want to be. Rarely do you go the Purdue route from a year ago when you're a 1 seed. So that's really what you're. Yes, twice. Yeah, that's true. But this week is huge because I think Tennessee has to finish this week strong. I think you would probably test this too. It's a rematch against A&M. You feel great about that one at home. But at Mizzou, you can't take that lightly, even with their struggles in SEC play this year and kind of coming back down to earth a little bit in Columbia. You need to go undefeated this week as well because you've got 6 losses right now. A lot of big, good losses across the board outside, like you said. The A&M loss was tough, but I mean, South Carolina is not a bad loss by any means based on what we've seen from Carolina. Mississippi State, not a bad loss on the road in the SEC, but you finish the Final Four. I don't know if there's anyone in college basketball who has a more difficult Final Four regular season play for any big time program because you've got Auburn at home on a Wednesday. You go to Alabama, to South Carolina, and then Kentucky at home to close it out. I mean, those are 4 top 25 teams to close things out. And I mean, I imagine if you're Barnes, best case scenario is 3-1. I think if you go 4-0, where like this team is just like the expectation should be split 2-2 maybe. But you hope for 3-1. I think 3-1 is where you ultimately want to be, especially if you're going for a 1 seed. I think you're still in a 1 seed category or right there, depending on how the tournament goes. If you go 3-1 in that stretch, but you got to take care of business this week, and then you've got to. I mean, it's going to be a lot. I'm just very, very excited to see these next 2 weeks of Tennessee basketball because every game is just going to be ginormous. And it's hard to sweep Kentucky in the regular season. It's hard, obviously, to beat Auburn at all times. We saw how that was a year ago against Tennessee, and Tennessee Auburn. It's always been really feisty. At Alabama, I think Alabama's only lost 1 home game, and
they lost to Clemson in the challenge. Yeah,
they're like 27-1 or something in their last 28 home games. Like it doesn't feel like it's a sneaky tough place to play in Tuscaloosa, but it is, and they have the best home record of anyone in the SEC. So that's obviously going to be extremely difficult. So I don't know. What do you make of this like stretch run here for Tennessee?
You said it best to start. You just got to take care of business this week. These are 2 games you have to win, and then. Yeah, I mean, I think 2-2 should probably be the expectation, but 3-1 the goal. And I think even right now, I would pick Tennessee to go 3-1 in those games. You know, I think Tennessee will hold serve, and in some ways, you know, I think Auburn's a bad matchup for Tennessee because they got Johnny Broome, the physical big man who's really skilled. Like we've seen Tennessee struggle with those guys, but you know, I just have so much questions about Auburn's backcourt play, and I just don't think they're going to be able to come into Knoxville and win. And then, you know, I think. Alabama, that'll be a really tough game. Probably be the one I picked them to lose. But like at the same time, like I think Tennessee that's a pretty good matchup for Tennessee. Like I think the teams that play fast and struggle defensively are the teams that Tennessee typically has had their most success against this year. Kind of going into the Kentucky game too. Of Tennessee can play fast and they don't get slowed into a possession game, and their defense is just a lot better typically than those opponents. And then it feels like South Carolina's coming down to earth a little bit. Not that game's going to be easy by any means, but you know, Tennessee hasn't gotten swept by South Carolina since Barnes' second year, I think. And that was, I guess, the South Carolina team that went to the Final Four. So, you know, I think they'll split those games on the road and they'll hold serve at home. And, you know, to the same point, opposite way, to be fair, Kentucky's playing a lot better right now. This was probably their best week, if not of the season, at least of SEC play, the way their defense played in the wins over Ole Miss and then at Auburn. So it's going to be really hard. And it's going to tell us a lot about this team. And I think at the same, even just adding to how much more fun it's going to be. Those are Alabama and Auburn. Those are the teams that you're competing with to win the SEC. And you're going to get a chance to play both of those teams in the last 2 weeks and, you know, kind of control your own destiny. And that'll also go right into the 1 seed conversation as well.
I like it. Ryan, more intriguing hire for you. The running back coach opening with Jerry Mack taking the running backs coaching job with the Jacksonville Jaguars, or the inside linebacker coach opening because Brian John Marie goes back home to Michigan. Which one's more intriguing to you?
I would even say probably both. I was thinking of the word being intriguing or important, and my answer would be the same either way.
Nicely done, nephew.
But to me, the intriguing
Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.